Welcome to this webinar about ACBF funeral funds in liquidation, presented by Legal Aid New South Wales and the Financial Rights Legal Centre. My name is Bridget Barker and I work in the Community Legal Education branch at Legal Aid New South Wales. To begin, I want to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional owners and custodians on whose land we are broadcasting from today. For me, that is the land of the Widjabul-Waiable people of the Bundjalung Nation. I extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people joining the webinar today or viewing the recording of this webinar at a later time. I'd like to introduce you to our panel now. I'm here today with Mark Holden. Mark is a lawyer with Mob Strong Debt Help, Financial Rights Legal Centre. Sue Ellen Hills and Jemima McCorn, who are both lawyers with the Civil Law Service for Aboriginal Communities in Legal Aid New South Wales. Mark, Jemima and Sue Ellen have considerable experience with the ACBF companies and have assisted many people with their claims over the last few years. Okay, I'll hand over to Jemima now to give you an overview. Thanks, Jemima.
Thanks, Bridget. Hi, everyone. I would also like to acknowledge that I'm joining you from Gadigal country, the Eora Nation, here in Sydney, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge all of you. You are all people who I imagine likely work in your own communities, in other Aboriginal communities, and are here today to try and get information to help your clients and your families and your communities. So thank you for coming along and thank you for the work that you do. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the webinar. So we are going to just be looking at the background and what we know about the liquidation, what we know about the companies. Mark's going to do that for you. We're going to look at what that all means for members. I'll go through a bit of that, what people should do about it and what people should do now. We're also going to hear from Mark about what the consumer advocates are doing in this space. Some of you might have seen the Save the Sorry Business campaign that got launched today. So that's the overview of the webinar. Before I hand to Mark, I think I just want to acknowledge that this is really difficult news for people, and we don't have a lot of good news. In fact, when I said that to Mark, he said, we don't have any good news. So I think there are processes that are taking place that are useful for people to know about. There are some things that people can do to make sure they stay informed and do get anything that is possible down the track, but yeah, there's just not a lot of good news. So I just want to acknowledge that before we go on. But otherwise, I will hand to Mark to talk about what we know.
All right, thanks, Jemima. So my name is Mark. I'm a Dundee man and a lawyer with the Financial Rights Legal Centre's Mob Strong Debt Help program. I'm currently on direct land right now. I acknowledge the elders, both past and present, here as well. So, like Jemima said, this isn't going to be a very positive information session as well. Also as well, I note that today is the 27th of April as well too. So any information we're providing here is as of this date. There will be some updates as we go along as well too, which we will try to be able to let you know as well too as we go on too. The matter is still progressing, so really you have to be able to watch the space. So let's start first with the fundamentals here. So there's ACBF, or the Aboriginal Community Benefit Fund, or rebranded now as Youpla to be able to help try to save its image, have three main funds. So there's Aboriginal Community Benefit Fund, Aboriginal Community Benefit Fund number 2, the Aboriginal Community Funeral Plan. Now there is one other funeral fund in the group as well too, but it's extremely small. It was more designed for non-Aboriginal people. There's only about roughly 100 members in that. Now, the main difference, so the main difference between the funds basically depends a bit on the time. So if you were signed up after March 2004 and 2005, then it's very likely that you would be a member of the plan. Now, it's also possible here as well too that people might have been signed up before then and they were under Fund 1 or Fund 2, but they might have also been transitioned onto the plan as well too. Sometimes there could be different reasons why, such as, for example, the previous policy was cancelled and they had to reapply and then they'll put in a plan. But as well, though, a lot of our clients have been very surprised to find out which fund they're in. So if you were signed up before March 2004, then it's likely you're either in Fund 1 or Fund 2. There's no real difference as to why they were put in one or the other as well too. What's happened here is that all the companies have closed down. So ACBF Fund number 2, that first went down back in November last year. That meant that their business had to stop. The rest of the funds went into liquidation back in 11th of March. From that date, it means that they did not have any money to be able to pay their obligations, including to pay their debts or to pay their claims out. In other words, they've gone broke. We're not quite, we're still trying to be able to figure out what's been going on here as well too. The liquidators who have been appointed here, they're now still investigating what happened here as well too, including where the money went. We understand that a lot of people are asking us kind of questions as well too. Liquidator for all funds now is SV Partners. So they've got a bit of a portal to update what's been going on here as well too. But what this means, basically means two main things. First of all, is that they've closed their business. So they that means that they should not be accepting any more payments from you as well too. So if you so they've instructed they've now instructed all the banks to stop accepting the payments. They should be paying back any premiums that have been paid since the 11th of March, and it should be refunded back to them as well too. If anyone's still making payments, then they need to be able to contact the bank and contact SV Partners as soon as possible as well too. Now, the second thing that also means is that they would not be paying out their claims. Now, that in itself means that the business has shut down, which means that they can't pay out the claims. However, though, that still doesn't stop anyone from trying to be able to contact SV Partners to still try to lodge claims and see where that goes. So Jemima will be talking a bit more about what's the details of the funds, but as well too, if you still need to make a claim for a funeral and it's urgent, then still contact SV Partners as well too. Okay. So what's happening right now as well is that the liquidators are now just trying to be able to look at, first of all, where the money's gone. Second of all, if there's any assets that could be sold here to pay off the creditors. And if there would be, then they would do what's called a call for dividends. Okay, so you want to watch that space. There's also as well some questions as to who will be a creditor here as well, as in someone who owes money. SV Partners have said initially that anyone who has a current policy with ACBF would be considered to be a creditor, which basically means that you don't have to lodge proof of debt or anything like that. However, though, there are still some other issues that are ongoing as well too. And like I said, that still remains to be seen as well too. Jemima, do you want to take the next one?
I'm sorry, I was just wondering, should I launch that poll so we can get a sense of...
I'm sorry, Bridget. Definitely. I realised I forgot to go to you first.
That's all right.
Do you want to do that now? We're just going to do a little interactive poll, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everybody. We'll just launch this poll because we thought it would be good to ask a question of you just to get some information. So the question is, it should be on your screen now. I'm here because, and you can answer by clicking on it. You've probably done polls before. I'm here because I was a member of an ACBF fund. I work with or help people who were members of ACBF funds, or both. Just give you a little bit of time to respond to that. Okay, thanks everybody. I'll close off that poll now and share the results. Okay, so it looks like everybody's working with people who are members of ACBF funds, so that's great. Thanks everybody for doing that poll. It was just useful for us to get that information.
Yeah, it's really good because we do know that there are you know, community workers out there who are also members, so it's just helpful to know that that's the audience we're working with. So thanks, Mark. So I was just going to go on to what does it mean for people? Thanks, Bridget. So I think the first thing to note is that Fund 2 and the plan are slightly different on the one hand to Fund 1 on the other hand. So you can see on the slide, I've got Fund 2 and the plan up the top and Fund 1 down the bottom. And that's because Fund 2 and the plan have very limited money left. So what we can see from the reports from the liquidators is that once liquidator fees are paid, we really think there will be nothing left. At most, it's going to be a couple of dollars. If you divide what the money is there at the moment, you get about $25, $26. So there isn't money in the Fund 2 or the plan. And so sadly, what that means is that people will not get their money back. The money they have paid into those products over the years, they will not get that money back. And those funds will not be paying out in the event of a death. Okay, so again, appreciating that is really big news if you didn't know that before now. What we are saying is that despite that, if someone does pass away, we think it's worth putting in a claim to SV partners because that can help compile information about how big the problem is. And liquidators can use that information you know, to talk in discussions with government or other people who might be able to assist. Okay. In relation to Fund 1, there is some money in the bank. So there are public reports that show that there's about just over $11 million in the bank for Fund 1. So we think it's possible that members will be able to claim some money in the liquidation process. So what Mark just talked about with people with active members being creditors, they will at some point likely be paid out a dividend. I think that's the right language, isn't it, Mark? We've all become fast experts in liquidation. But that process is going to take a long time. So the liquidators have said it's not going to get resolved in 6 to 12 months. It's likely to take longer than that. And so Sue Ellen's going to go through what we want people to do, but one of those things is to make sure SV partners have your contact details. And Sue Ellen will go through that in a bit more detail. Again with Fund 1, they may or may not pay out in the event of a death. So we really encourage people with Fund 1 to make a claim. Now, often people will not know what fund they are a part of. They'll struggle to remember when they signed up because all of those dates are a long time ago. So that's why we're just saying just contact the liquidators because they will know and they can decide what happens if you need to make a claim. We are also encouraging people to make a complaint to AFCA, and Sue Ellen will go through that in a little bit more detail. And I think that's it on that one. So we might go to the next slide, Bridget, thank you. So what happens now is that the liquidators will investigate and report to members. So they've already done one report and that's available on their website, and we'll give you those resources later. they have told us that there is apparent and alleged wrongdoing. They can see basically that a lot more money has gone in than is now held on trust in relation to Fund 2. And so they are looking at what action could be taken against former directors. But there's a big but there. It's expensive. It takes a really long time. Some former directors live overseas. So we are not hopeful that that process will, see any real benefit for people, certainly not in the short term. You need money to run court action. And as we just said, in Fund 2 and the plan, there is no money. So, or very limited money. So, a lot of people might talk about, well, what's going to happen? Who's going to sue who? And we just like to kind of issue, I guess, a word of caution about relying on that as an outcome. The Australian Financial Complaints Authority, you may or may not have heard of them. They kind of like an ombudsman for finance complaints. So you can go to them where you've got a consumer kind of dispute. We, all of us, Sue Ellen, Mark and I have been running claims in that body against ACBF, and up until it all went downhill, we were successful and we were winning and we were getting people payments in AFCA. AFCA has stopped processing those claims because, as Mark said, there's no one to take that claim against anymore. So the company has closed down. They are accepting claims. And the importance here, and Sue Ellen will go into how you do that and what we recommend you do. The importance of doing that is that it keeps a record of the injustice going on here. It helps our call to government to assist because it builds a picture of how many people are affected by ACBF's wrongdoing. We appreciate that you might not get anything immediately out of that. Well, you're not going to get anything out of that process immediately, but it still might be a useful thing to do to kind of build that picture. It's about the bigger picture there. Bridget, did I send a question?
Oh, yes. Thanks for noting my expression. Yeah, one of our audience members, Catherine, has said some clients have asked if there are options for a class action. This relates to what you've just been saying. I feel there won't be anyone to pursue with money, but is this something that might be an option down the track?
Yeah, and I think that's where we're saying that's part of the job of a liquidator is to look at what actions creditors could take where there has been wrongdoing. So they will look into that and they will investigate it. But yeah, so that's what we're saying to people. That is really the message, that liquidators will look into that. Consumers of themselves are not going to be in a position to launch action against people. It's too costly and there's no money. So if there's two things to any court action. You need money behind you, but you need to be going after someone with money. And at the moment those two things are not available. But it doesn't mean something won't happen down the track. It's just that at the moment it's a big wait and see game. And I think it's really about relying on the liquidator to look into what has happened. ASIC will also look into it. So I think what happens, and Sue Ellen or Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but if the liquidator uncovers wrongdoing, they report that to ASIC. So that's the Australian Securities and Investments Commission. And they're also responsible for, the responsibilities of directors and companies. So they will also look into those things.
That's correct. But also as well, it is up to them to decide whether or not to go ahead. And like you said, there's so many factors that don't make it so hopeful, but it's still up to them.
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's not a particularly hopeful answer, Catherine, I'm sorry. And I know that a lot of people are asking about a class action, and I think it's probably best to really manage expectations about anything that is going to come out of that. Thank you for the question though. At the moment, at this stage, government are not offering any help at this stage, but we will keep calling for this assistance. Mark's going to talk a little bit about the advocacy that consumer advocates are doing in this space in terms of asking government for help. You might have seen some of that in the media today. And I think that's it for me. So I think that is actually over to you, Mark, on the campaign.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so today we just released a open letter. Well, actually, we emailed last night. We emailed both the treasurer and shadow treasurer about this situation. We've got endorsements from over 125 different community organisations, including some peak level bodies, including National Legal Aid and New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council, to be able to highlight this issue. We were sort of looking at two different fronts here. First of all, SAT basically saying we need urgent intervention here. We need urgent action from the government to be able to help try to provide some form of compensation. We haven't really given an idea as to how much is required because the amount that's at stake here, it's still a bit here and there, but it could be upwards to about at least, well, at the very least, conservatively, at least $77 billion lost, or even up to $300 million lost here as well too. So it's a bit broad there. We are hoping also as well, raising the point here that this has been well known to the government for decades. Like the government's known that ACBF had been marketing itself as an Aboriginal company when in fact it wasn't, and that it had been targeting a lot of vulnerable communities and pressuring them into signing up, not just themselves for this unsuitable product, but also their children as well too. So we've had people paying tens of thousands of dollars in premiums, thinking that this is a savings account, but it's actually just an insurance policy. So we're trying to be able to sort of try to urge them into that. Now, we also know that the government is in caretaker mode right now, and the election's on 21st of May. We're hoping that the incoming government would try to be able to do something about this. So far, neither Liberal or Labor have committed to a compensation scheme. Labor government have promised an inquiry into what has happened here as well too. The Liberal government minister, Jane Hume, has said that there is still an ability for people to be able to get a funeral, like a pauper's funeral, but that in itself would be extremely insufficient to be able to pay respects to our elders as well too. So right now, we've only released it today. We've also got a online petition as well too through Choice that could be completed by yourself to be able to help try to urge the government to be able to do something more about this. We don't really expect the government to be able to say anything about this for a while too, but as well though, we're still trying to be able to keep pushing on this to try and get the government to be able to respond on it. Yeah. So I think, Sue Ellen, you're got the next part.
Yep, thanks, Mark.
Sorry, Sue Ellen, I was on mute.
That's okay. I just also wanted to acknowledge that I'm on Gadigal land, the Eora Nation, and I do thank my elders for guiding me in the work that I do for our Aboriginal communities. So you have all heard that there's not a great deal of legal options available for people, and we know it's just heartbreaking to hear that. So I just wanted to speak a little bit about step.
I think you've frozen, Sue Ellen.
Yeah, I think she has.
Seems to be a bit of a technical hitch.
I can carry on if you like, Bridget, and Sue Ellen can join back.
Yeah, it might be an idea. Yeah, it's probably, if she froze
Yeah.
for all of us, I think she's probably frozen for all our audience members as well.
Yeah. Okay. Apologies, everyone. You have to put up with me again. You didn't get to hear from the lovely Sue Ellen. The messages here are really about what people can do now. Staying informed is really important because, as Mark said, all of this stuff we're telling you today, it's current today, but things might change tomorrow. So staying informed is really important. The biggest way that clients can do that is to make sure they have updated contact details with the liquidator. There's a form online, and we will send all of that around to people after the webinar. But you can also just Google SV Partners ACBF or SV Partners Youpla, and it will come up. There's a little form, you can fill it in for people's contact, to update people's contact details. You can also do that by phone if you don't have internet access. People might want to learn what fund they're in. Ways to do that might be to look at any documents people have, to look at any messages, text messages people have got from the liquidators or Youpla, or call the liquidator. So that's the first thing, really important thing. Make sure there's updated contact details with the liquidator. They will then be informed along the way. The liquidator will tell them when things change, when things progress. The second thing, as I said earlier, is to register a complaint with AFCA. And we're saying to people, if you can do that online or by phone, and again, that will come in the email, that would be really helpful. It's a difficult one because it doesn't do a lot for the client right now. But what it does do is build a picture, and AFCA, obviously, you know, they're a big player here and they're in conversations with government as well. So it might help along the track if AFCA have a clear picture of what what's going on for clients and for community. So register a complaint with AFCA. It's actually really easy. You don't have to provide, you just provide your contact details, the company, and one sentence about what's gone wrong. If someone passes away, make a claim with the liquidator. We can't promise that that is going to get a payment for people, but we would encourage people to do it anyway, because it might. If you're in Fund 1, maybe, and for the others, it's about building that picture. As Mark said, check that your payments have stopped. Make sure the client's payments have stopped. They really should have stopped by now. There were some people who they did continue to take money from, and SV Partners have said those people will be refunded. But if there is any problem, contact the bank, contact SV Partners. The last thing is really about thinking about alternatives. So in the conversations that Mark, Sue Ellen and I have been having with clients and community, people really want to know, well, what do I do now? How do I pay for the funerals? And that's a really difficult question, because there aren't a great deal of really good alternatives. I am now like really going off the top of my head because I didn't prepare this slide, and I was hoping Sue Ellen would be back. Okay. But the Moneysmart guide is really helpful resource. There's an ASIC Moneysmart guide, and it basically goes through each product that is available in the market now, talks to you about the pros and cons of those products. And it also at the back has information about what you can do if you haven't planned ahead. So you can see on the slide there's planning ahead options. And so they are things like a prepaid funeral with your local funeral director, a funeral bond. Again, you can access them through funeral directors often, a savings account, funeral insurance. The funeral insurance, you know, there are a lot of warnings that come with funeral insurance, because this product was a funeral insurance product. So we really, we encourage people to look at that guide. It does talk about the risks of, paying for a very long time, overpaying far more than your benefit. It's insurance. So if you stop paying, you lose your money. So there are risks with that one. It's hard though, because it gives you cover right now, whereas the others don't. So that's kind of, you know, what happens for communities that you're thinking about the pros and cons. There are at the time options that are not necessarily going to cover the whole funeral, but they're really good to know about. So in New South Wales, you have the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council grants of $1,000. You can sometimes get quicker access to superannuation just for funeral costs. Sometimes there's a Centrelink bereavement payment. Do we have her back? Is she back?
She's back.
But she can't hear.
No.
Okay, I'll keep going.
No, I'm back.
Hello, you're back. Now, Sue Ellen, I'm sorry, but I proceeded to mainly do this slide for you. I'm sorry.
Thanks. No. I'm sure you covered everything that we needed to cover.
I was just talking about the options, the kind of at the time options. So I talked about the planning ahead options.
Yep.
Talking about the at the time options, I mentioned the New South Wales Land Council, superannuation, Centrelink bereavement payment. Are there other things you wanted to mention on that?
I think that was probably most of it.
Okay.
The Moneysmart PDF is really good to talk through with clients, and it's easy to read, and it gives you lots of pros and cons and about everyone's different situation, because everyone's different and no one thing will suit everyone. So, you know.
And Bridget, is that the handout that's in the panel?
Yeah. Thanks, Jemima. Yeah, I was just waiting for an opportunity to mention that. I should have mentioned it earlier, but yes, there is a handout in the control panel that people can download, and that's the ASIC Moneysmart brochure about paying for funerals that Jemima referred to. We also have an audience comment that sadly most of my clients don't have the ability to pay for a prepaid funeral, have a saving account, or prepare for a funeral due to not being able to afford to at the late stage of their lives.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry, and I agree, that is the reality for people now. Yeah, it's awful. Some prepaid funerals will allow you to sort of put money in over time, but as you say, if people are in the late stages of their life, that is difficult. Yeah, I'm not sure whether you have anything to add on that, Sue Ellen.
No, we just don't. That's the really awful thing. There's just no other options at this time. We wish we could, but we can't. And I think that's the message that we need to get along.
Just also as well, though, this is why it's really important to be able to still lodge a claim with SV partners as well too. I mean, there are people outside of this who've now we've been contacting with, who are now starting to register interest in trying to be able to help out here as well too. So that's why it might be possible that SV partners might be able to secure some angel investment or angel funding to be able to help try to help pay for some immediate funerals or costs. But as well, though, that's still being sort of worked out right now, though, but still lodge the claim anyway.
And just tells you again to stay informed. It's really important to stay informed because stuff might change. And the last point there was.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Bridget, you go.
There's just been another comment that it's an issue. Affordability is an issue for all people, as most don't understand the funeral insurance policies that are being sold out there in general. Yeah, yes. That's Scott has made that comment.
The reality. The other thing we don't have here is just that financial counsellors are really great resources, because they can also talk to people about these options in more detail in terms of what people, how people can direct their money and what their options are.
Yes, you can go onto the FCAN, the Financial Counsellors Australia Network website, and put in where your local financial counsellor is
they're great. They're a really good resource, and they can do a lot of things that you'll be surprised about.
So back to you, Sue Ellen. You, I think, got the last slide.
Yes, so sorry, so we're up to, yep, so SV Partners website. It's a great one-stop shop for a term. They do have everything that's been going on. They're really easy to deal with. You know, we will often, if we're speaking with a client, just give them a call with the client, give them their details. You can send it by email, or they do have like an online portal where you can put the information in. They're good. They're just really easy to be in contact with. Keep up to date with financial rights. Mark's got his advocacy program going. Legal aid, we also have fact sheets, information, always be in contact. If you're not too sure what's happening, we're always happy to help. The Moneysmart, paying for funerals, it's a really good guide. And just keep up the advocacy. You're obviously in there in the community. You're working with people, you're helping people, you're hearing exactly what's going on, and you're a great advocate and a voice for your clients to get the government to do something, to step in and to help all of these people with what's happened. I think that's my part.
So we have another audience comment from Kayleen. Kayleen says, I'm a financial counsellor and I believe we need to do more education to consumers regarding funeral funds.
Yeah, there's not,
Yes.
I know before the liquidation, when we would explain to clients that they actually had a funeral insurance product, not a savings plan. Very few had that explained to them, the difference between the two. And, you know, when the companies were going into liquidation, they're like, well, can't I just, you know, withdraw my $6,000? And we're like, no, it's an insurance product. And it is difficult, and it was never explained to people ever, and we know that. But yeah, Kayleen, it would be great if you can keep the word out there and explaining the difference and what it means. For some people, a funeral insurance product might be actually appropriate for them at this time in their life. But also, again, it depends. Yeah.
Also as well, so Financial Rights is doing a presentation for financial counsellors in WA on junk insurance, including funeral insurance. We're happy to, if you guys want to organise a discussion about that or another CLE about that, you're more than welcome to send me an email, and we can try to look at organising one for your area as well too.
Thanks, Mark. I think the other thing to say about that point about the education is that we know from the AFCA determinations that the conduct that ACBF were engaging in was misleading people about the nature of the product. And so they've been in the market for 30 years, and that has drastically impacted people's understanding of funeral funds and funeral insurance, because people were being misled about the nature of the funds. And so that is part of the kind of impact and aftermath of this situation, unfortunately. I think that's us, Bridget. I mean, do people have other questions they'd like to put to us, or any further comments?
We'll just give people a little bit of time, and I should let people know that all those resources that Sue Ellen and Jemima have referred to will be sent in a follow-up email after the webinar as links in that email. So don't be concerned if you're not quite sure where to find all of those resources. You'll get that information about an hour after this webinar finishes. Don't have any more questions at this point. Just people saying thank you for providing the forum and good luck with the work.
Thank
we
you
wished
for coming
it was better
along.
news. Yeah.
We really wish we had something better to say. And I'd just like to thank Mark, Sue Ellen and Bridget. It's been really good to, I think, be able to provide this information, and then it's available on YouTube as well for people. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks to all of our panellists, Jemima, Mark and Sue Ellen, for providing this opportunity for community workers and community to get some up-to-date information about the present situation. And yes, it will be available on Legal Aid's YouTube channel probably by this afternoon. So if you know anybody that wasn't able to join, they can come back and listen to it at a time that suits them, and there are captions available when it's on YouTube.
Great.
So I think we'll close the webinar at this point, because I think you've covered everything and obviously answered people's questions as we went along with the information.
No
So
worries.
thanks everybody for joining
Thank
us,
you.
and thank you all.
See
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Bye.